Hey, welcome to both of the channels on this one. I want to talk about something that that really is applicable to both. So welcome to both integrated preparedness and American reversion. I want to talk about how they're killing us and how they have been killing us uh, for 50 years with drugs. And I'll tell you why in a minute why I say that. I know that a lot of people don't want to admit it. A lot of people may not even understand what I'm talking about. They say, "What in the world is he talking about?" And I'll tell you exactly what I am in a few minutes. Uh, Driving home, I heard on the radio, so I looked it up, and I'll read you this a little bit of this article that maybe some of you have heard. Probably most of you haven't heard it yet. It just kind of came out. Multiple West Point Academy cadets on spring break overdosed on fentanyl-laced cocaine Thursday at a Florida rental home, Fox News has confirmed. First responders were called about 5 p.m. about multiple overdoses at the vacation rental home in the city of Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale. Fired Wilton Manors. Fort Lauderdale Fire Battalion Chief Stephen Golden said. Let me scroll down here. This is extremely alarming to us, and I tell you, I'm gonna call that battalion chief just BS right there. What the hell do you mean? This is extremely alarming to us because it is, and I know, don't get mad at me yet. Okay, this is the kind of language that softens what the problem really is. This is extremely alarming to us. There are multiple people in cardiac arrest on the front yard. He said Narcan, a drug used, and all my first responder friends are very familiar with that. A drug used by first responders to reverse symptoms of an overdose was administered at the scene. Golan and two of those who overdosed were sickened because they tried to give CPR to the initial overdose victims. So the fentanyl, so some of these guys OD'd. Their buddies tried to give them CPR, but inhaled fentanyl or transferred fentanyl, so they were overcome. Some of the patients regained their heartbeat after the Narcan, but others were still in respiratory arrest when they were taken to hospitals. These are healthy young adults, college students in the prime of their life. Not only that, but these were cadets at the military academy. Getting this drug into their system, it's unknown what the recovery will be on the critical individual. All 6 patients were men in their early 20s and were in town for spring break. Excuse me half a second. Sorry, I'm back. Had to take care of something. All 6 patients were men in their early 20s and were in town for spring break from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in New York. 2 remain hospitalized in critical condition. The U.S. Military Academy is aware of the situation involving West Point cadets, which occurred Thursday night in Wilton Manors, Florida. The incident is currently under investigation and no other details are available at this time, the West Point Public Affairs Office told Fox Digital News. Okay, here. This is a scream, what I'm going to tell you, and I say that with 100% cynicism, born of experience. This is from the Wilton Manors PD. It's spring break season. This is their tweet. It's spring break season in Wilton Manors City! Exclamation point. WMPD wants to warn spring breakers about the dangers of using illicit drugs and to avoid mixing drugs with alcohol or other forms of drugs. Protect yourself from the dangers of fentanyl. So they tweeted that out as a warning to all the youngsters down there. Somebody down here and says after they recover, they should be prosecuted under the UCMJ. Yeah, that's right. They should be kicked out. Okay, look. I got another story I might bring up here in a minute. Don't know when I'm going to get there. They've been the drug situation. Now, some of you, many of you, but I know that we have a lot of new subscribers, and you may not have been with me that long. I used to be a narcotics officer, undercover narcotics officer in a major city for quite a while. I was on the local level. I was with a DEA strike force. I was with a federal task force on something else. I dealt with this stuff very deeply for a long time. One of the reasons that I left, and because when I went into law enforcement, I did so primarily because of the drug situation that was occurring. In the late 60s, we saw a lot of the kids in our area starting to sniff glue, airplane glue. Um, and then, of course, as Woodstock and the hippies started, then it became weed, and then other things, heroin, speed. And then as we got into the disco days, Quaaludes, cocaine, all this stuff. Okay, this is not new. And the U.S. government has been complicit in all of this. I'm not going to go into a deep dive of the details of how our government has been complicit. Many of you know already. Some of you have an inkling. If you don't, Google it. There'll be plenty of places you can go, I'm sure, that will let you learn about how our government has been essentially the pusher ever since the late 60s. They have had a vested interest in not only sustaining but increasing the drug problem in our country. The reason that I left them, so I went into law enforcement for that very reason. I wanted to work drugs. After being in it for a long time, I realized, and the reason that I left law enforcement was I realized that our government had absolutely no desire to solve the drug problem. The so-called war on drugs was a big phony deal to get a bunch of money for federal law enforcement and local law enforcement so that they could get all the taxpayers to pay higher taxes to help the drug problem that was attacking the youth of America. And because, the bigger the problem, the more they can scare you. But this was something. This wasn't a fake situation. It was a real situation. It has been ever since the late 60s, and it's killed millions of people. But the more they can get people concerned, the more they can act like they're fighting it, the more money they get, which means they get bigger buildings, they get bigger staff, they get more equipment. All the sergeants become captains, all the captains become majors, half the patrolmen become sergeants, and up and up and up, and the special agents become SACs, special agents in charge, and everybody gets a better job and an office job and walks around in suits and goes to meetings to talk about how concerned they are, knowing full well that it's all a bunch of bullshit, and that they need to keep it going. They need to keep it going. The problem is it has become so insidious. And this is why, we could have solved the drug problem, and it's not organized crime. Do not blame organized crime. I mean, there were some in organized crime who were involved in it, okay? The traditional Italian organized crime, not so much. It's certainly not the old guys. The younger guys did get into it. And to where back in the 50s and even into the 60s, those who got into it were sometimes taken out because the mob guys, they didn't want drugs for the most part. There was a couple who did, okay? But, the mob, the mafia, is not a monolithic organization. They had different people with different motives and different feelings and different standards. But most of the old guys kept that away simply because, for one thing, many of them had moral problems with it. I know a lot of people that's a surprise to. They thought that it was wrong to do. Also, that they knew it would bring law enforcement down on them. Now, there was this idea that law enforcement would come down on them because it was wrong, right? Because it was illegal. No, law enforcement came down on them because they had an excuse, a reason. It was a jobs program for cops, for law enforcement. When I went to DEA school in I don't even remember the year. I don't keep years like a lot of guys do. The late 70s, early 80s, sometime right around 80. They actually told us in DEA school that cocaine was absolutely safe. These were the DEA instructors. Cocaine is absolutely safe. There is nothing addictive, nothing wrong with it. There is nothing, however. So why are we going after it? Because there happens to be a law against it. They used that law to go after mob guys, to go after other guys that they wanted to go after. And if you say, well, you said mob wasn't involved. No, a lot of the younger guys were. And they weren't taken out like some of the older guys would have been. At that time also, and I'm not going to bore you with this, I won't go into detail. If I need to, I'll do it over on Patreon because this isn't the place for it on YouTube. We were seeing, it was right after the boat lift out of Cuba. Castro emptied his prisons into our country. These people were an entirely different situation than we had dealt with before. Following them came the Colombians. And if you want an idea on, I tell you, there's a couple of, Scarface was, Pacino was, but that was pretty close because I had a good friend of mine who was with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, second in command, and he said Scarface pretty right on. It was pretty close to what it was up here, but not near in the bulk that it was in Florida and in the Gulf Coast. Sicario is another one. If you want to watch a good movie that comes, I don't like police movies so much or military movies because most of them are just a bunch of BS. But Sicario is a good one. I haven't seen the second one, Day of the Soldado. I want to, but I just haven't gotten around to it. Anyway, they used it as a program to make money and to build up. And because it had become the golden goose, the cash cow, they couldn't let it go. There was no interest in solving the problem. We could have, I think, maybe I started this sentence sometime back, I'm sorry. We could have solved the drug problem in Kansas City in a month. In a month. And not really probably doing much, how shall I say, outside the lines. Because back then, whatever, I'll leave it at that. But we probably could have solved it, but we weren't allowed. It just like the guys weren't allowed to win the war in Vietnam. Okay, no, because there's money involved. This has continued, and it became so insidious within our society, and then it became excused, kind of like I talked about the other day. It became excused so that the people who used drugs were victims. They were to be felt sorry for. We needed to have a bunch of therapists and a bunch of treatment centers and things like that. Why? Because there was more money in it. Now there's money in enforcement, and there's money in building more prisons for them. Our prisons are full of nonviolent drug offenders, and then there's money in building prisons, money in the people that bring the food to the prisons, and everything and all that. It's just in and out. It's a circle. Okay, you're in for a couple of years, you come back out. We know that you're going to get strung out again, or you're going to rob a drugstore for money. So we get you again. That means more cops, more probation officers, more parole officers, more correctional officers, more prisons being built, more cops on the street. Everybody gets promotions. Everybody gets raises. See, this is something that the government cannot allow to be solved. And as a result, it's killing Americans. So essentially, it's murder for hire, and it has been. Everybody who knows that this is what's going on. And so, like I say, it's become so insidious, it's accepted throughout the fabric of our country. And now we have West Point cadets who go down there and smoke or take fentanyl-laced cocaine. Where do you think it comes from? Our open border. That's right, the South. Why do you think we have an open border? So we can get more illegals across. I have a good friend of mine who's down on the border. He was retired Army, and he was with, he trained BORTAC, the Border Patrol Tactical Units, for a while. Haven't talked to him for a while, but a mutual friend of ours just gave me his new number. I think I'll call him and see how he's doing, what's going on down there. And if he tells me anything interesting, I'll let you all know. But this is coming in from Mexico. Fentanyl's coming in from Mexico. Our border is open so that we can make sure that we get more fentanyl, more dope, more cocaine across our southern border, so that we can get more illegal immigration, so we can have more human trafficking, because these things make money for the people. While they endanger the lives of the people involved, they make money for the people upstairs. So this is a large national sacrifice sacrifice of the children, sacrifice of young adults. Sadly, sacrifice a murder, I would say, of adults, because so many adults now are so weak. They don't think enough of themselves to live a positive life. They'll take drugs. You know, drugs are and I include alcohol if it's abused to that extent, is one of the most. It's the most devastating thing you can possibly do. We have families who introduce their kids. I mean, even out in the suburbs, and yes, out in the small towns. I'm going to say something about that too. You know why I don't want to move to the country, to the small town? Because they're full of meth. That's right. Maybe people don't know that. Every small town I know, it is full of meth. Why? Because the young people don't have anything to do. And they don't have any prospects. Half of them, well, I won't say half of them. I'm not going to denigrate, because there's a lot of good people that come out of small towns. But those who don't have what it takes to get out of small towns end up just running that rat wheel. And it's full of meth and other things. We just had a situation here, just came out on the news, up in Baser, which is a small town up in Kansas a ways. 20-year-old guy just arrested for sex crimes against children. Okay, a little town out here just to the east of us, another young guy arrested for killing a kid. The small towns are not a haven. As a matter of fact, sometimes they're more dangerous than the larger towns and the larger cities because of the isolation involved and the lack of law enforcement. And I know that people can say, well, but the more people you have, a percentage of that equals more people. Well, not exactly right, because it's easier to kind of lay low I'm not going to get into it. It doesn't matter. This isn't a city versus country argument. What it is my point, is saying it's everywhere. It's everywhere. This is one of the many reasons that our country is dying. Okay, and just like I put over on, if you're watching this on integrative preparedness, then it's just like I put on here the other day when I said this may be the death and this may be the end of America. This is one of the reasons. People kind of said, well, don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. Hey, I have been dealing with this stuff for, how old am I? I've been dealing with this stuff for almost 50 years. Okay, it's not that I am some hope-filled youngster. I have seen what's happened to our country. I've seen what's happened. It is not getting better. It is getting worse, and it's getting worse every year. And that's one of the many reasons that I think that our country may be over. At least for a while, there was some semblance that there was some kind of enforcement, people trying to stop it. There is no trying anymore. They are not trying. They are going to meetings and shoveling bullshit. Okay, and they'll make an arrest here or there. They'll do a raid here or there and come up and say, look. Matter of fact, there was a raid here in Kansas City. I just saw that 200 law enforcement personnel went on a big raid and arrested 25 people. I'll guarantee you who those people were. There were 25 low-level people. They're going to cop a plea, and they're going to do a couple of years, if that, and they're going to be moving on. It'll make no dent in what the situation is. This is what has been rotting the core of our country. This is what has been eating away at the heart and soul of our country. These are the generations that should have been the next generations contributing to our country. And they're wasted. They're wasted. And nobody will do what it takes to solve it. So that's what I wanted to say today. This gets in to West Point. Now, I wasn't in the military, but we used to have a high regard for people who went to West Point. You know, you would think they were tight young men. Apparently not. Kids used to be raised not to give in to peer pressure. Okay, it was only those people of very weak morals and very weak characters that gave in to peer pressure, and it was the weak ones that did drugs. Now it gets everywhere. This is why America is dying. This is why America is close to death. Now, I was going to make another one on this, but I'll shove this in at the end here. I think I'm not sad that this America is dying. This America has to go. It can't continue like this. But I am not without hope. See, what I hope for, what I look for, what I work for, is to prepare for what comes next, because this is a rotting carcass, and a rotting carcass doesn't come back to life, because there's nobody trying to bring it back to life. I mean, this isn't a dying, well, maybe it is. Maybe it's a dying cow. But the dying cow doesn't come back to life unless somebody tries to save it, and nobody is. As a matter of fact, most of the people, if they're not just standing around watching, they're trying to kill the cow. Okay. This is to be taken seriously. Most people don't have any idea what this is about or what's really going on in our country. I know some of you do. So leave your comments. Those of you who have experience, leave your comments. I always like, you know how it's like when you run into somebody. Those of us who have lived a certain kind of life, when you run into somebody that can understand you, somebody who's had similar experiences, there's a good feeling there for just a little while you're talking to them, right? I get that good feeling sometimes when I read the comments of those of you who have also seen the inside of the monster, and can give those who haven't seen it, who haven't been there, a little additional information and insight in addition to my own. That's it, guys. This country's dying. I don't think it's coming back in any way. That's why something has to be restarted and rebuilt, because this thing ain't being saved. Okay, you all remember when I say we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, I am not necessarily preparing well to live within the structure as it is, this country as it is. I'm preparing to survive this and do well in an alternative way, right? Okay. And for those of you, you've heard me say the last couple of days, I don't know if we're really looking at a reversion or not anymore. When I say this country needs a reversion or it needs you to be a part of it, I think it needs a lot more than a reversion. Okay. Anyway, you all have a good day. I hope that this has illuminated a little bit to some of you who may not have understood this, and I hope that you'll share it with your friends, because this is what's killing our country. Y'all have a good day.